to it. Thanks for joining us. I'm Deb Yorkman, and today's supply chain hero is Mike Goodlin. Thanks for being with us, Mike.
All right, thanks for having me, Deb.
Why don't we just start by talking about your role here at SDI and how long you've been here?
Sure. I've been with SDI going on 6 years next month.
Oh, wow.
I'm currently a site manager at a local pharmaceutical group. Prior to this role, I had a role as an implementation consultant. So I got to travel around and set up and create things from scratch and turn them over to operations. So now I'm on the opposite side of that.
But so you're you're right on the site every day, pretty much?
Every day. COVID has nothing on us. Business as usual based on what the customer makes. It required us to be on site every day.
You know what? I'm finding that about, just in general in supply chain that, our clients, especially a pharmaceutical plant, they create something that's essential for the people. So we essentially have to be there for the client, and a global pandemic isn't going to stop them from producing the medication that they produce. And so you and your team are on site every day, and thank you for continuing to do that. What attracted you to SDI back when you first started?
At the time I started with another company who did something very similar to what we do, just on a different level, higher nor lower, but I was fortunate enough to know some employees who came from SDI. And at that time period, there were only those two companies in this space. So the obvious direction would be, let's reach out to SDI and see if they can find a home for me. And it worked out well for me.
That is a great testament. Whenever like your friends or your family works at a company and they feel strongly enough about it to say, hey, I think this might be a good fit for you, because they're not going to steer you wrong, otherwise, damage your personal relationship. So that's great. What's been your biggest surprise since coming on?
It was actually two things. I was surprised based on the business models that we have here. I was expecting we would have an overabundance of different clientele, like multiple hundreds. However, it seems like we have larger customers that are a little fewer and far between. Shall I say, we have the bigger customers versus my old company, but we've been retaining them. So I mean, clearly we're doing something right. It's a different model for me, but going in 3 years into the operations side here, we're adjusting fine. The other thing would probably be the centralized purchasing. That was definitely new to me, having to reach out to somebody not sitting right behind me to get a PO created, or being able to be in control of where that's going. It was a little bit different challenge, but you build a rapport with those people and everything goes seamlessly for the most part.
Yeah, the center-led procurement model is definitely has its strengths in that we can drive compliance to pre-negotiated contracts, to the sourcing strategy, but then having people on site all the time helps as well, so that we can continue to understand the client's evolving needs, right? So it's a good hybrid approach. It's a good mix, and you talked about it being a challenge, just learning a new business model. What would you say is a difficult challenge that you and your team may have faced during your time at SDI, and how have you overcome it?
That would probably just be the offsite purchasing group. This was a totally different model for me, to where it required continuous coordination, weekly meetings, building that relationship with these offsite individuals that I didn't have the opportunity to physically see, let alone, we weren't at the Zoom or the MS Teams meeting at the time.
Right.
So it was conference calls. It was getting to know who my team was, who was working what, empathizing with what they had to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and just kind of working together and collaborating to make sure we met that goal. And that was something that my supervisor instilled in me currently. hey, get on these meetings, talk to these folks, find out what they're doing, and it's worked very well for me. I have a great team that's supporting my site right now, and I probably know more than I should in terms of their processes, but that's simply because I want to know. I want to be able to understand what pain points they have and how that possibly may roll out to my day-to-day operation.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's part of your change management process. Whenever you said you were on the implementation teams, whenever you roll out a new client, building those relationships, um, but also just kind of like you said, we're in a customer service business, so people are our differentiation, and so building those relationships and strengthening them, that's definitely a strong suit of you and your team. So you talked about how, we've come on to this whole Zoom and Microsoft Teams, and just everybody's getting accustomed to working this way. And when you think about what's happened over the last year, over the course of the pandemic, what key learnings can you take out of this experience?
Two things: pick up the phone and call suppliers instead of waiting on emails. I think nowadays everybody is, for lack of a better term, trying to cover their own hind parts by sending an email and having that documentation. They kind of miss that connection with calling somebody and trying to get them on the phone to resolve the issue. More than 2 or 3 emails, pick up the phone and get a hold of somebody.
And so just being direct and
Yes.
and having that direct communication, then that's one of the things other people have talked about too. Just being able to solve problems that way, and you can always obviously cover your neck by following up with an email just to make sure everybody is on the same page. So yeah, that's a great one. Um, what said you've been here for 6 years now?
Almost.
So 6 years, you've probably accomplished quite a bit in 6 years, especially our business has evolved so rapidly. What's something that you're really proud of that you can tell us about?
So I'm proud of pretty much everything I put my hands on. Fortunately, I've had the luxury to implement many different sites. Probably, if I had to guess, 2 dozen sites, if not, P2P or full-blown implementation. My current site's probably my biggest accomplishment that I'm most proud of. We were afforded the opportunity to build this from scratch. So we're currently leasing a building. SDI was assigned one big corner of that building, and we pulled all the materials from Connex boxes that were out in the snow in the middle of winter and erected it and configured it as we saw fit. And it's a great show and tell site where I'm at, and I love it for that. They're very appreciative. They can find what they're looking for.
I remember meeting with you and going through the site when you were first building in the warehouse across the street.
Mhm.
And if I'm not mistaken, that the client was also in the middle of switching their ERP system as well,
Yeah.
right? So we had to implement the new warehouse and help them through this major transition. So it was good to have boots on the ground to help them with that.
Yeah, I believe it was go live. Our first day was when they switched from one ERP system to the other.
You know what? It always makes things interesting, right?
Yes.
So tell me, how do you know what you do? You're there on the site every day, but if you're managing the warehouse staff and how do you know what you and your team does makes a difference to the customers? Do you get to interact with them?
Not so much due to COVID. They do have some restrictions on who goes down into the facility now, and a lot of the office personnel are still working from home as you would expect.
Right.
I would I would say it's just knowing that they're up and running. We have weekly meetings. We're not hearing any feedback stating they're down or a line is down because of their missing parts.
Hmm.
They're waiting on us. It's basic. It really is. It's just knowing they're still up and running. Everything's good. Their business is good. We're still here and employed. You know.
Can't ask for more than that. And so their production schedules have been Have they ramped up, or have they just been pretty steady, the same?
Since COVID, they've made some adjustments. However, I think right prior to COVID, they were entertaining a new process that they were going to start making from this facility. But it's definitely no different than what it was before COVID. That's
Wow.
probably the best I can say.
That's a good thing. I mean, you heard of a lot of companies that had to shutter their operations because production was down, because they couldn't get the proper protective equipment for their employees, and so they walked off the line. And so having a customer where, we're supporting the supply of their maintenance, repair, and operations supply, and if it's steady, that means their production's got to be pretty steady. So that's great news. What would you say is the most rewarding part of your job, Mike?
Probably just interacting with the customers. I'm not used people friendly by demeanor and facial expressions, but I like providing value to them. I like them coming and looking for a part, and it may not be the easiest thing to find or to track down, but I like the research. I like taking the extra time to make sure that they walk away happy. That's why I come to work.
That's so nice. So, you like helping people, and you spoke about that earlier about working with empathy. And, throughout the pandemic, that's one of the things that I've seen as a marketer, that reaching out to people, how can we help you? It goes so much further than, from a marketing perspective, trying to sell them something.
Yeah,
Um,
and we had great initiatives during the COVID, in terms of additional PPE that we may not currently be stocking or the customer never used. But internal to SDI, we were able to get our hands on additional PPE and say, hey, look, we can help you out here. Just send us a PO, and that was great to see. And
yeah.
internal to SDI within other sites, I actually can't remember the gentleman's name, but I drove to New York to get bleach because our suppliers were completely out of bleach. But he was fortunate enough and willing enough to loan me 3 or 4 cases just so the customer could clean what they needed to clean and keep running. So that
Wow.
was great.
And that's going above and beyond. I mean, you like driving up to the city from Wilmington is it's not it's not just a half hour drive.
In the hot spot too. That was early on as well. Little I was a little weary, let's say.
So, you've been here for 6 years, and SDI is growing as our the industrial manufacturing and education and retail space starts to really adopt a more digital supply chain. We're growing exponentially. What advice would you give to a new recruit that was coming in?
Oh, easy. Ask questions. Take advantage of your onboarding. I know that's been a recent change or an adjustment in the last 3 to 4 years since I was on,
Hmm.
but we're offering the training. We're offering the mentoring. I've been a part of actually being the trainer for some new hires, but there's really no silly question. You're not the way SDI is set up. You're not expected to know how everything works. There's a handful of different departments that all work together. So when you're doing your onboarding, ask the questions. Hey, what are you in charge of? If I have this issue, take notes, but don't be afraid to pick up the phone, even if it's lateral to another site manager, your supervisor. Call corporate. If somebody's going to be able to help you, nobody's ever turned me down on a question.
Yeah, asking why, getting to the root,
Sure,
asking those questions, that's how progress happens, right?
absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Mike Goodlin, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Sure. Thank you for having me.